Gallery of the writer and illustrator judges, a selection of the awards the contests have received, a library containing novels and art books published by winners and judges, and a selection of photos of some of our beloved keynote speakers and guests. For nearly 4 decades, L. Ron Hubbard's Writers of the Future contest has discovered and nurtured a steady stream of new authors and artists who have changed the face of science fiction. Chosen by an impressive panel of judges, drawn from the biggest names in the genre, contest winners are given the best possible foundation for a long-standing career. Now in its 3rd year, the Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast continues to provide advice and tips from contest judges, industry professionals, and contest winners for writers and artists wanting to take their next step, along with needed inspiration to keep on going. If you are already a regular listener of this podcast, I thank you. If you are new to it, I welcome you to the weekly installment of the Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast. This is John Goodwin, your host. Hello, and welcome to the Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast. This is John Goodwin, your host. This podcast is dedicated to the aspiring writer or artist and will provide inspiration and tips from top professionals in the field, along with contest winners and a few surprise guests. Well, today we have a very surprise guest. We're at DragonCon in Atlanta, and we have with us the CEO of the DragonCon, Pat Henry. Welcome, Pat.
Hey, thank you, John. Welcome to you guys. Thanks for coming to Atlanta to visit.
Thank you. So just for those of you who don't know, because this podcast I know is listening to fans from about 100 different countries all over the world, DragonCon is the largest multimedia popular culture convention focusing on science fiction and fantasy, gaming, comics, literature, art, music, and film in the known universe. So from the start, it was fans that created DragonCon, and it's now that culture that tries to be maintained. And that's what we're going to discuss in today's podcast. So to begin with, how did you get started? First of all, just in books, because I first met you back in the 80s when you were owned actually chain of comic stores. So how'd you actually get started in this whole line of work?
Well, when I had the comic stores, I knew that I had to do comic shows because the stores did not make enough money. And frankly, I could get out and promote at the shows. Mm-hmm. And I was into books and comics and into science fiction. In 1981, my life went through a change. And I started reading things like Dune and at any rate. So yeah. I fell in love with science fiction. And at some point, my wife decided it should become a vocation. And we were at another show, and a guy hollers, "Everything in the box is 50 cents." And she went nuts, and I went nuts, and we bought $300 out of our savings account worth of comic books. We're sitting in this huge pile of comic books, and I'm saying, "Wow, what are we going to do now?" She said, "Oh, we're going to open a store." I said, "No, baby, I love my job." She said, No, honey, we're opening a store." So
she was the inspiration. That's amazing.
Oh no, it was not inspiration. It was, and she laid the hammer.
That's real to me,
and it's great. It's fun.
Yeah,
and it's crazy as it is. So we started the stores. Now the convention, that was my thing because I knew we needed to grow, and so we did conventions. And I was participating in a game convention. I was participating in science fiction. Anything I could do for the conventions. I wanted to do,
right?
Because I felt it was money in my pocket down the road. And then 7 of us got together in about 1986 at some point, late in 1986. 7 of us that wanted to build a convention that we'd want to attend. I mean, at the time there were Doctor Who conventions, but okay, Doctor Who conventions. I mean, what can you do? Yeah. And then same thing there were Star Trek conventions, there were gaming conventions. But what we wanted to put everything together where you could go to the vendor hall and buy you some comics. Then you could go over and do some gaming. And then maybe you could get some books. And you could pretty much participate in whatever you wanted to. We did it 24 hours. And we threw in a little rock and roll. So it was quite a trip early on. The first show, we only had 1,200 people. And that's frankly an overestimate. That's counting the hotel help and probably any homeless guy that wandered through. But it sounded good. It was a good number for, we thought it was a successful convention. And so we went from there. We were at the Piermont in Atlanta, which is no longer there. We were there for 87, 88. And we were first started in October, too. We started in October. We did that for 87, 88. And then 90, we were at the Omni. And so
then you've gone through various transitions since doing this. Your landscape has been all the different industries, all the different fan industries. So one of the things that DragonCon says is it's by fans for fans. Can you explain that a bit?
Sure. By fans for fans, we actually listen, and we're fans. So we do have a nice app, and we can get people's opinions. We watch what people like and what we like, and so it's literally by fans for fans. I was doing an interview with Georgia State Radio a couple of years ago. I guess 2018, 2019, something like that.
Right.
And they were asking what I was going to do next year. I said, I have no earthly idea. I mean, we're going to keep enough of it the same that if you like DragonCon, you're going to be fine. But we're also going to have to bring in new stuff every year to see what everybody likes. So, whether that was back in the day, we jumped heavily on the Firefly Serenity, which I was at a meeting of my senior directors, and everybody was talking about the new DVD for Firefly that came out and how Fox had aired it out of order and ruined it. But I mean, my gaming guy was talking about it. My sci-fi guy was talking about it. My guest guy was talking about it. And I'm thinking, I got to get this. So I sent the secretary to buy me a copy and watched it. And I said, this is big. This could be good. So, I mean, it just develops like that. We went, I saw that Nathan Fillion was going to be at a show. And so I sent somebody to go talk to him and bring him to Atlanta. And so we had Nathan and we had Fillion and Baldwin and I forget, we had 3 of them come the first time. And I remember showing them their suites and whatnot. And they kept saying, why are you doing this? I mean, a suite at the Marriott's pretty serious.
Yeah.
And they kept saying, and I said, because we know who you guys are. And they said, well, no, why are you doing this? I said, because we know who you are. And then when they went to their first panel in Centennial, which is the largest ballroom in Atlanta, they looked out through the curtain and they said, what are all these people doing here? They're here for you. So you just pay attention. And so that's how we got into Serenity. But we've done Stranger Things. We do, whatever the fans want us to do. And that's what it's about. And,
what was it? You told me the story before this interview a little bit about Jefferson Airplane.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was, when we developed the convention in 87, it was never, the purpose was not to make money. The purpose was not to lose money, which was good. And so financial projections, that was my deal. And there was some serious stuff as far as getting those financial projections. And I was really good at it. I was really proud. On Sunday, we'd have enough money to have the next year. And that was kind of my job, the criteria, one of my jobs. And the projections ahead of the show looked like we were going to have $10,000 too much. And so Jefferson
How can you have too much money?
Because the purpose of the show is not to make money at that point.
Okay, good. Right. So that was part of your...
That was it. Yeah. We had a secretary, and we had me, and I ran a comic book store. So, and we had my wife, and she didn't get paid. So at any rate, so it looked like 10 grand too much. And so I said, hey man, that's just what they want. Kismet. Let's bring them in.
So you brought in Jefferson Airplane.
Yeah. And little did I realize what that would do to the population, which exploded. So what was a $10,000 became $100,000. So, and at that point, it was Katie bar the door. So we did do some things, that I'm really proud of. We are tremendously a giving people. And if you look at the charities, the local charities of Atlanta, we've, in the past 7 conventions, we've given over $1.2 million to charity. So we can find places for the money.
Yeah.
And, and people get paid now. We've got a core group of staff that do get paid, which is nice. A lot of us could drop our day jobs and dedicate. I think the last full-time employee I hired, her job was to improve the production value of DragonCon programming, and that was pretty much her job description. And she's done. We're working on it. It's a big show. There's
you've got and the number of panels and number of events that you have going on here. Has anybody ever counted it?
Oh yeah. I don't remember it, but it's over 3,000, maybe 3,500 hours. So not this year though. This year with COVID, we're having to close rooms to get cleaning. We're closing them twice a day. Well, twice, one at night and one cleaning during the day. So it was almost a joke. Actually saw a costume closed for cleaning.
Yeah, I see it on the schedule. It has closed for cleaning. It just runs for like a half hour on all the different rooms, and then they're back open again.
Exactly. So this year is kind of off for us, but it's been a challenge with the COVID. I mean, who knew that we would have these? And originally we had a great idea to get the vaccination. We were going to put a special badge together for the vaccinated. And then when the city of Atlanta said you have to wear masks, it kind of took that out of my hands. So
yeah,
we figured, okay, well, we're going to do masks because that's what the law demands. And a little later, we said, the masks aren't enough. And so we did do the required vaccine or a negative test 72 hours before in order to come to the show.
Which is, there's so many pros and cons on the whole thing on it. But the fact is, COVID's real. And, when you're in this, even though you've capped it at 40,000 people here, which is what, half?
Yeah.
It's still a lot of people. I look out here and there's just a lot of people there.
Yeah. And all it takes is, possibly one person to, spread it. But we think the safety is important. I mean, at DragonCon, if you can't relax at DragonCon, good luck. You can't relax anywhere because, I mean, first time I came to one of these shows, I was home. There was like a little hole that all of a sudden it closed, and I saw there are a lot of people like me. I mean, they're into the science fiction, they're into the comic books. I didn't have to, hide my comics under the bed anymore. I mean, they're just, you know, and that's what these conventions are for, to let people know you're not alone. Let's get into this and let's get into it big.
Yes.
So at any rate, go big.
Yeah, we definitely got it big. Now, at what point, obviously with 1,200, to where you are now, how has the growth gone? At what point did you take over downtown Atlanta?
I would say in 2000, we had maybe 5,000 people, which is very manageable. In 2001, we got more.
Yeah.
And then I think it was 2003 when we just exploded. I mean, guests were calling from anywhere, wanted to come to the show. They didn't care about getting a hotel room. They just knew it was going to be a big year. And it overwhelmed us at DragonCon. And the board of directors told me that the year after that, no growth. And I said, guys, let me get 10%. Let me get 10%. And 10 or 12. And the guy said, okay, Pat, okay, we'll do that. The next year we nailed it right at 12%. And I was terrified because I'm a back in the class guy. And all of a sudden I knew that I could control the dragon. And that was a scary, scary moment for me. Yeah. When you're riding a dragon and realize you're in charge. Wow.
So the year that you took over and you went from being the accountant to being the face of DragonCon, what year was that?
That was 2000. Actually, I wasn't just the accountant. I mean, that was part of what worked when I did have to take over. I had been to the pre-cons, the post-cons, all the hotels knew me. I was the business guy. I was the business guy on contracts. I was the business guy that handled things. And so when I had to take over, I went in with the hotels and I said, I'm taking over the front end and my wife's going to take over the business end. They were delighted. They were absolutely thrilled to death. Yeah. And at that point, Sherry probably has more to do with getting us back to the family show that we had wanted to be, but she has been a terror. She's also been great on the charities. I mean, she took over the charities in 2001. They brought her the charity money in a sock. It was that poor. And so, no, she went to great lengths to expand our charities. And now, I think last year in 2019, we gave $120,000 to the Heart Association. Yeah, we do a match of up to $100,000. So they raised 60. So we threw in another 60 roughly. And we're hoping this year it's Big Brothers Big Sisters of Metro Atlanta. And we're hoping for somebody to get that 100. We used to do 50 and people started getting the 50. And I said, sure, let's go 100.
Yeah.
I mean, let's get it.
Which is great.
Yeah, it's awesome. The fans here are the most giving. Not everyone has had the same opportunities in life.
Right.
There are some genuinely less fortunate than others. and we need to help take care of that.
Yeah.
So I'm delighted. We've had a number of charities. We've had diabetes, we've had lupus, we've had the Heart Association, we've had leukemia, we've had cancer. Those charities. We haven't had, yeah. It sounds like I have a Miranda.
And you're still walking.
Diabetes. Yeah, no. Yeah, we have, at any rate. So that's what we have, you know, and it's
and you also have
awesome.
the blood drive is the single largest blood drive of any convention. It's the second biggest blood drive in America, but it's the largest one for any convention, which is really impressive too.
Right, and shout out to Life South. Life South, we used to try to get the blood drive from the Red Cross, and they wouldn't get the people for weekends, and we're on a weekend.
Yeah.
So they really had a lack of interest. In Life South, when we talked to them, they were willing to come in, and when they came in, holy cow, they came in, they were dressing as vampires, and I mean, just really kicking it. Yeah, so DragonCon-esque that it was awesome. It was terrific. And they go out and promote and whatnot. And I don't know, I guess they were here for 3 or 4 years. And the Red Cross said, "Oh, we'll do that." And I said, "Oh, no, you won't." We're very happy with these guys. And they really are. We do that over in the Hyatt. And we're just glad to be a part.
Yeah.
But you're right, that's another.
Yeah, and it's
and I think you guys have helped contribute books over there. I think yeah,
pretty much every year now since I learned about it, because it's the Robert A. Heinlein blood drive. So Robert A. Heinlein and L. Ron Hubbard were great friends during the golden age of science fiction, and so when Mr. Hubbard wrote Battlefield Earth, he sent a copy to Bob Heinlein, who wrote a really nice letter back. So now we made a thing where we donate copies of Battlefield Earth to anybody that donates blood with a copy of the letter that Heinlein wrote to Hubbard. And so it's made a nice little caper. And if it results in more people donating blood, then that's all the better.
Right. You know, and I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. We love books.
Yes, absolutely.
We love books.
Yes. So now, I originally met you. You had that chain of comic stores. And I think it was, when we were releasing, it was either had just finished Battlefield Earth, or we were just releasing Mission Earth, because that was in the mid 80s. And I was at Bridge Publications then. And I guess I met you first at, I think we shared an iced tea or something like that in a bar, something like that. I got to meet you. So, but it's been a great relationship we've had, you know, all along. But just with respect, because we used to share Anne McCaffrey.
Yes, we did.
So Anne was one of the first judges for the Writers of the Future contest, and so we'd fly her out from Ireland, and then we'd pay for flying her out, and then you'd pay for sending her home to Ireland, because then she'd fly from L.A. to Atlanta for the DragonCon after the Writers of the Future Awards event. But she was like such a strong supporter of Mr. Hubbard and the contest. You know what he did on creating that.
Well, yeah, and when you find out about what the contest is all about, I mean, how do you not support it? I mean, it's an entry opportunity for science fiction writers, which creates a greater pool of talent. Which, you know, the fact that it was endowed forever, and now you're doing artists too. I mean, holy cow, the talent you guys bring into the field is incredible.
Yeah, I remember when you came, because you were the keynote speaker at the Writers of the Future event a few years back, and watching you, because you're with all of our judges there, because we have probably the single highest concentration of A-list science fiction authors and artists in any place.
Absolutely.
And you're like a kid in a candy store.
It was, yeah. I was, and I mean, it was so fun. Like Dr. Purnell, we'd never had him. I mean, we hadn't had him in years at DragonCon, and I didn't have a contact for him. But I'm sitting down talking to Larry Niven, and Larry comes to the show all the time. Yeah. Anyway, we were cutting up and talking and whatnot, and Dr. Purnell came and sat down, and as Larry and I are talking, he says, "I haven't been to DragonCon," and I continued to talk to Larry, and then a little later he says, I wouldn't mind coming to DragonCon." And I continue talking to Larry. I'm digging this now. I'm digging this. I think I've got him hooked. And then a little later he said, "Well, I would need 2 airfares because I bring my son." And so I looked and I said, "That is not a problem." Would you like to come to DragonCon? Why, yes.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, it's just crazy like that, and running into Larry Elmore, who I've known for years, and it was a lot of fun.
But a lot of the people you've got here are people that are graduates of Writers of the Future. They're winners that are now you see here.
Eric Flint is one.
Yeah.
But and the fact that you guys do that, holy cow! I mean, to see the extent of the judges and the expense and the amount of money that goes into it, and it's a top-notch event. The presentation, it's black tie for crying out loud. It's awesome.
Teleprompters for crying out loud.
Yeah, that's where I got my teleprompter. I used it out there at Writers of the Future, and I have one now of my own that I use at opening ceremonies. And it's excellent.
That was just one thing that, like I said, Mr. Hubbard was so adamant about helping the aspiring writer and artist. He had a big track record of that back in the 30s and 40s when he'd be at publishing houses and somebody else would come in and he'd give them tips. And we have different books that have letters correspondence between him and other aspiring writers at the time, giving them, coaching them advice and what to do. So this was just like an extension of what he had been doing all along. And he started in 83. He passed in 86, and he put it in his will that it continues, to happen, because that was the last genre he wrote in, was science fiction and fantasy.
Right.
And that's we had Battlefield Earth and Mission Earth, and it's gone really well. Obviously, those titles are great, but it's just the fact that now we're in year 38 of the contest.
Wow.
Ready to release volume 37. And you just take a look at how many people from the first 10, 20 volumes are now the best-selling authors of science fiction and fantasy and the top artists in the industry. You just kind of go, wow. And I run into people say, are you familiar with Rise of the Future? And like Rob Sawyer said, am I familiar? Let me tell you. Some of these people you read now, they entered the contest. Brandon Sanderson, he was a finalist, or he was an honorable mention. And Rob Sawyer was a finalist. And Joe Black, he was an honorable mention,
Wow.
So it's just all of a sudden you find out these people, they're like, wow, I entered the contest. Yeah, I did. It's important that people have that sense of hope. Don't give up, don't quit. If you get that honorable mention from the contest, because it's blind judging, it means that your work really was that good, and you're in the top 10 percentile to be able to get that.
I imagine it also helps them down the road to get published, to have that hanging on their shingle.
Yeah, there was he didn't win Britain's Got Talent, but he was a finalist. He was in the final 3 or final 2 when they're winning to who's going to win the big check and go perform for the Queen. Daliso Chapando, he was a comedian from Malawi, and just a brilliantly hilarious person. But he has entered the contest, and he got an honorable mention. He kept the cert on his wall for years, because that was the only thing that gave him the sense that I can write. I do have it. Don't give up. Don't quit. And so he finally made it through. Now he's one of the most popular comedians in Britain. But on his resume, he says on there, Rise of the Future. He's still on his resume now, even though he's a very famous comedian. It's just, you see that all.
Well, just my speaking was not my strong suit, but after you guys got finished with me, I'm not scared of it anymore.
Yeah.
I've got my teleprompter there, and I'm good to go. So it's amazing as you guys mold talent, as you guys help grow talent. You guys encourage people.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a program.
Yeah. Yes. That was Mr. Hubbard's intention, and we try to honor that. And so now it's so great having a show like DragonCon, because your recognition of what the contest has done, but also making it possible for others to be able to discover it. It's
right. And people come and meet the people that have done well in the contest. They can come and meet their favorite authors and whatnot. I mean, just like this trip, I met John Scalzi. I'd never met the guy before, but I started actually reading his book here, the Lock-In. And oh my God, I bought 3 books. I'm a fan. He was DJing last night at the last party at Alderaan. I mean, this is crazy, but you get to meet these people up close here at DragonCon. and find out, wow, this is okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. And Eric Flint does a whole lot here. You got, I can't tell you how many panels that guy does here. So but it's interesting world. It's an interesting world. Yeah, you get them started, and I'll take them from there.
Exactly. So now on DragonCon, so on the DragonCon.org site, it goes through the whole history of DragonCon and what you're doing now with it. So it was growing, and then at some point, like we started talking about, you took over downtown Atlanta, and so how many spaces? How many? I mean, it's just huge.
Well, let's talk about the hotels with DragonCon.
Okay, yeah.
I did 2 truths and a lie yesterday for our DragonCon TV, and one of my truths was DragonCon currently has 5 host hotels. Totally, over the 35 years, we've only had 7 different hotels, and that's pretty remarkable. 35 years we've been that in set. Yeah. But I do believe you bloom where you're planted. You stay there.
Yeah.
So right now we have 5 hotels that are kind of, and as we added hotels in 2001, we had the Hyatt and we had the Marriott.
Right.
And if you go before that, it was always single hotels for the most part. But in 2001, we had the Hyatt and the Marriott. In about 2005, we were starting to bust at the seams. We had been asked to leave the Hilton in 1996. And I went back to the Hilton and said, hey, we'd like to get some rooms and maybe just a little space. And they said, oh, okay, we can do a little space. And so I signed up for, I think, 100 rooms. Well, when they turned around, we sold 500, and they needed to get me to okay that, which of course, and so I asked, well, can I get a little more space? And eventually, yeah, it worked out. So we had kind of weaseled our way back into the Hilton. And the other funny thing is about the bridge. We have a bridge now between the Hilton and Marriott.
Yeah.
When we were there in 1991 through 96, they kept talking about the bridge they're going to have to the Marriott. Well, I went back in 2005, and they were still talking that crap. And I said, don't. I don't want to hear it until you build the bridge. And then when they did build the bridge, they invited Sherry and I to come down to the opening, which was kind of cool. But, that really helped. The bridge connecting. And then once the Hyatt saw how effective that bridge was for the Hilton and the Marriott, they built one. And then we have what's called the DragonCon Freeway connecting all 3 of my hotels. So, and
then now you have the Sheraton as well.
Right. We have, and the Westin. And I think we picked up the Westin first because we went to the Mart about 6-7 years ago. And the Sheraton, there was a little girl down there that kept calling, can we get 50 rooms? Okay. and at some point, we just blew up her hotel. We bought everything. And and all of a sudden, it was great. She was the hero. And it's interesting down there at the Sheraton. It's got
because that's registration.
Yeah, that's registration. And they've got the New Orleans pool atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And each of the hotels every year does something different to maintain their individuality and to court our DragonCon fans. Like, for instance, this year the Hilton is doing a Stranger Things. They've got their lobby set up like a mall. And I mean, come on, that's just crazy. But it's DragonCon. So
yeah.
And then at the Westin, they're doing gems. So it's an infinity stones. So if you do this, you get a stone. If you do this, you get a stone. And once you get them all, they draw for prizes.
That's great.
Yeah, every hotel does their thing, and it's we love it. Hot dog.
I'm sure
would be
that
the game too.
Having missed last year, it was just devastating because my favorite restaurant is Miss Pitty Pat's Porch, and they shuttered, and I was just so sorry to see that because that's where we always had all of our dinners, and it was right across the street from where we're exhibiting. So that was really sad to see. It's happening everywhere. So imagine that. Have you done any calculations like how much income does DragonCon bring to Atlanta?
Yeah, several million. Rachel will have to be here to tell you. I think about 7-8 million at least. Oh, wait a minute.
No, that doesn't make sense. It'd be way more than that. That's probably just hotel
60,
almost.
60, 70 million maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you with that number, but it's a lot. It's a lot. And speaking of missing, last year we were on virtual online, and it was fun in the fact that we were on 6 continents and 47 countries, and that's kind of fun. However, the city of Atlanta did hurt, and we went to our pre-cons this last week, and the hotels. One of them hadn't had a pre-con in 17 months, and they were hurting that bad for DragonCon to be back. At the Sheraton, they were in tears. They were so excited we were back. So I mean, it's just what we mean to the city of Atlanta, to the hotels, to the restaurants, to the cabbies, to the Ubers, to the homeless, because we take care of our homeless people. It's amazing. And we're, the fact that we are able to do good for so many people is just a real blessing.
It is indeed. It is definitely a blessing on that. So now on DragonCon and, fans, now you having been a bookstore first, and you said you had to do the conventions because that's where the fans were?
Well, it was a great way to promote my shops. So, I did books and comics, and that's how I reached out to get new business. Comic book stores run on a shoestring budget.
Yeah.
So at a show, I could make money and at the same time promote. And one of the big things for me was I priced all of our books, not like most comic book stores, which was they would get as much as they could get. I would price mine like I was at a competitive show. So I wanted people to know that they could buy their back issues at the same prices in my shops as they could at a show. So which worked out pretty well for us. So, I mean, obviously it grew to 7 at one point, and it worked out okay.
That's great. Okay, now DragonCon is the first multimedia show in terms of all the different platforms that you were able to provide for. I mean, it's not just TV and movies, but you've also got gaming. You've got books, comics.
We're a science fiction convention by design. We have an opening ceremonies. We have a con suite, and pretty much the original design for DragonCon was a science fiction convention with different tracks, and the different tracks would allow us to have Star Wars, Star Trek, comic books, gaming, and we could have various panels, and we could make it a little more interesting than, say, a Doctor Who convention, a Star Trek convention, a gaming convention, because we had all these tracks. And you could go to a track room and stay all weekend, and you could just get about as much Star Wars as you could breathe in.
Yeah.
Or, you could select, well, I'm going to go to a Star Wars panel, but I also want to go over here and I want to see the Doctor Who panel. They got this 10th Doctor who's actually pretty cool. And, and then we have a bunch of literary tracks. I haven't even talked about them. We've got a science fiction track. We got science fiction fantasy. We have young adult. We have literature. That's where we started.
Yeah.
That's where we started. So
when you had Anne McCaffrey, or you had the Pern track,
yes.
That went on for
it went on for a long time.
Yeah.
And so we have the different tracks so people can do what they want to do. And
so then in terms of people listening to this podcast are aspiring writers and aspiring artists. So branching over now to art for a bit, your art show over there in the Hyatt is probably one of the top 3 in the United States, of just as cons have had to like downsize or economize. One of the first things that would be the art track.
So I've heard, but no, we let's just say we make our money at the gate. Anything else is okay, but it's not a big thing. And as a matter of fact, Don DeSantos was asking us when we quit charging on something, I forget what it was, we quit charging. He says, how are you going to make money? And Mandy looked at him and said, we don't have to. But, so we love the art show.
Yeah.
My wife was down there buying with me yesterday. And that's also a part of science fiction conventions, is a good art show. And I don't get involved in the top or the 1, 2, 3 or any, I stay away from that. we are who we are.
Yeah.
And I found that to be successful, just to be who we are, as long as we can be who we are. And that's enough. The fans love it because essentially the fans are in charge.
Yeah.
So if they want to go in a direction, we'll go in a direction. I mean, I never would have come up with the zombie walk. I mean, but I think it was Friday nights, people dress up like zombies, and I think they start at the Westin and they wander through the Hyatt. I mean, and they're up. I don't know if you've ever seen any of the.
I have
movies.
seen zombie walks. Yeah.
I mean, it's whack, but people have a ball, and we love seeing them.
Yeah.
The 501st comes in, who's the Star Wars group, and
the Stormtroopers.
The Stormtroopers, and they'll march around. As a matter of fact,
that's a nonprofit. The 501. That's why it's called 501, because it's a nonprofit.
That's right. And
charitable type. They do all these things to help other people.
And they help us, and we help them. They raise a lot of money for charity. But in 2000, the 501st, Sherry and I were beat up in 2000. It was very tough, and we were both thinking about quitting. And we were up on the second floor of the Hyatt, and partying going on around. But it was a very tough year for us personally. And the doors opened, and here comes the 501st. The Hyatt had these brick floors, and you could hear those feet, and the crowd that was drinking and having a great time just separated. The 501st came through. They were walking Jeremy Bullock and David Prowse to a track, and they came in just with their arms just imperfect, just like at any rate, and down the steps. And then the crowd went nuts. And Sherry and I looked at each other and said, "We can't quit this. We cannot quit. This is too much for so many people."
Yeah.
And that's when it became, what do you call it? A mission. So
because it's amazing just how many people look forward to the DragonCon and what it's done. But like I said, with the art show, which you've got down there, like Dan Dos Santos is one of our judges for the Illustrator contest. And he said it's going great. The first day, the second day, today's the third day now. And he said it's been great for him. Bruce Bernizzi is one of our winners, and he's just gradually growing and growing and growing. But he was one of those guys that really does well because of conventions. He's there and people can see his wares. They can buy his stuff. And he does, a lot of artists do well at conventions. And so a few people came out, but I think more next year people will hopefully, are able to come out even more so, just getting over the COVID.
Well, too, the artists can do panels and things, or they can talk to the fans and they can make connections with them, which is, it's all about connections. It's all about personal relationships. And that just adds to their cred, their legacy. So we have, we support the artists support us. Great opportunities here. But the art show's here to stay.
Yeah. And it's,
we make ours at the gate. The rest of it is okay. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cover the cost. We're good. And even with the art show, I don't care if it covers cost.
So then if an artist sells, because a lot of times at other conventions, they have to pay a percentage of whatever they sold, to the convention. It's just.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So what? I tell you where my money is. I mean, that's the other thing about it. We increase the price more to control population than we do anything else. And I'm not ashamed. I mean, we do what we do. And, I think, frankly, for the value of a badge, I think nobody can touch it. I mean, it's, you get a 5-day show for, I think at the doors, $140. I think. I don't know. I need the girls here to prompt me with some
You're just a pretty face for the show now.
No, well, it was so much for us this is 35 years for me. And it was so difficult and so much. And Sherry, she's been here to 35 too. And the girls were interested. I mean, Rachel's been showing people the tables since she was so high. And then as soon as she went to work for Delta, she started booking our flights for us. And then she was chairman's club at Delta. And at Delta, they said, "Oh, yeah, you can work from home 2 days a week after you have your baby." She had the baby, and they said, "Oh, no, you can't work at home." And so she says, and she calls him up. She says, "Dad, I'm going to leave Delta. And I said, well, are you leaving Delta or are you leaving Delta to come work for me? And she said, oh, I'm leaving Delta. I said, good, send me a resume. And she did. And of course I hired her because she knew more. This is not an easy job. You have to know a lot.
Yeah.
You know, you have to know a lot of people. You have to know a lot of how we do things, because we don't do things like normal business. It isn't all about money. And so at any rate, she was adequately, more than adequately. And it gave me an opportunity, me and Sherry, to step away a little bit. And Mandy had already come on board. She has lupus. And sorry, Mandy, if I outed you there. But at Delta, they wouldn't let her cut back on her hours. And the doctor said she needed to cut back on hours. So she started working in our business office in accounting. And now she was the CFO. She's the controller for our company. And that's kind of funny too. People thought when I was the controller, I was hard with the money. And then my wife took over and they said, man, you were a patsy. And now, just like mom, just like mom. So she, we take care of the dollars and cents.
Yeah.
So,
oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So with people now coming here, and this is, I think, for the writer and the artist, it's getting more and more when I do these interviews with other professionals. They talk about the need for, the traditional publishing is now not so much the current way of publishing taking place. You need to have your own connections. You need to have your own fan base. You need to come into your ante into the publishing pot, or the illustration pot is, what's your fan base? What can you do to make those connections? And I think that's something that's really important with conventions. And the convention at DragonCon is different than other conventions like that. You're not, like, we're here in America's Mart, so I guess it's like a convention hall, but it's so not like any other convention hall. Like if you go to the other, Salt Lake City Fan X, the San Diego Comic Con, all these other big shows, they're a huge convention hall, one big hall that you're in there, and you have your booth set up. And here you've got all these spaces. You can sit down and you can chat. And so is that part of the mindset on this?
Actually, the part of the mindset is to keep in hotels. If you look in most convention centers, you don't see a lot of places to sit. Here they are because we asked for them. However, the hotels, we're mostly adults, and some of us drink. And I joke that we don't like to be more than 50 yards from our next cocktail. So the hotels love that because we sell alcohol for them. And the hotels can, like I was saying earlier, can have their own type, like the Avengers at the Westin and the Stranger Things at the Hilton, and they can have their own, and people feel love. And whereas at a convention center, it's a lot harder to do that. The convention centers are cold, they're big, the ceilings are high, but in a hotel, you've got the carpet, you've got the hospitality, they're ready to get you a coffee, they're ready to, take care of you. So the thought is, for me, is we have to stay in the hotels. Yeah. I mean, the hotels love us. And I love them back. Because they're just crazy. I even have a person that goes and samples their special cocktails. I mean, and they name them after science fiction drinks and science fiction shows and whatnot. But, we have a girl that will go and taste them for them and say, this is going to be great, and help them with the names and stuff. And
wow, there's a job.
Well, it is. But I mean, we want them to embrace us.
Sure.
And they get a kick out of it.
Because if it's their DragonCon too, then they're going to contribute to emotion. It makes it even a better experience for the fans.
Right. And there you go. That is exactly what this is about. I want to give the fan the greatest experience for 5 days. So they just can't live without us. They just have to come.
Yeah.
And like, for instance, when we decided we couldn't have a show in 2000, I had to wait till the last minute, 2 months before the show. And then the governor said you couldn't have a gathering bigger than this through August 31st. Well, I was bigger than that. So I know that meant I was done. So at that point, I told Rachel and Mandy and everybody, okay, we got to go virtual. Okay. And there was some concern about 2 months to set up the virtual we did last year, but it worked out really good. I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of the girls. But with we had to hold on that long for the hotels. The hotels had hope that we could run a DragonCon, and until the governor said no, then that was it. But we had met, we had talked about scaling down DragonCon then, but once the governor said so, but it worked out. At any rate, 94, we offered refunds to our people that had bought. 94%, no, roll it over. Wow, that's a heck of a number. And then we've sold an incredible amount of Eternals during the 2 years since the 2019 show. That's just ridiculous. That's a $3,500 membership.
Wow.
I mean, yes. And they believe in us and we believe in them.
Yeah.
So
now we're here at America's Mart, Building 2. So you're pretty much on 4 floors. So 4 floors. And so is there any plans to be able to jump up to a 5th floor at some point, or you're capped at 4?
All they got. We've always found a way. I mean, when we needed to expand, we found a way. I know. All right, now I'm going to get in trouble. The Apparel Mart, Building 3. Yeah. I've been here so long. We were here from 1997 through 2000, and they were called the Merchandise Mart, the Apparel Mart, and Gift Mart. So sometimes now it's Building 1, Building 2, Building 3.
Yeah.
So translation is tough. So Building 3 still has a lot of space, but that building was built a long time ago, and there are not enough bathrooms for mine. But if I have to, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So
because I remember when you moved in here, we were given a tour. We're going to come over here from
Well, it used to be at the Marriott.
Yeah, because I remember in the ground floor of the Marriott, we had a.
And I was talking to a woman today. I mean, not today. I guess when I was doing the elevators on Wednesday, actually in the hall.
You're running the elevators.
Yeah, absolutely. At any rate, and one woman, some guy was complaining about how this is like the Hunger Games to get in, and she said, "Oh, honey, you should have seen us when we were at the Marriott.
Oh,
there were gypsies coming in fire exits. It was awesome." At any rate, so yeah, we moved from the Marriott, I guess, and then we moved first across the street to Building 1 because I knew I couldn't take the vendors geographically any further than that and have the vendors feel like it was okay. So we did that for 2 years, which was horrible, but it was better than over in the Marriott. And we did that for 2 years, and then we moved down here to Building 2. But if we tried to move here all the way from the Marriott with nothing in between, who knows?
No transition, yeah. This is definitely the best of the places that you've had. I mean, no way you could have handled Marriott because it just totally, you just burst at the seams totally there.
Right, and we have other uses for the Marriott now, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we're just grateful that it works. It's
now you've also got the parade. So that started and then it's transitioned, and
let's talk about the parade. Yeah, the parade's got a great story on its own. I was walking with our guy from Freeman, my rep, and the Salvation Army was coming down the street with a parade. And I love the Salvation Army. I had a buddy of mine that was getting sober. He got out of detox and he got a bed for $1. And he was excited because he drunk up everything else. And so, I mean, I love the Salvation Army. They do take care of people, and we've had them as our charity before as well. But they were doing a parade, and it wasn't much of a parade. But he and I started laughing, not at how motley the parade was. We were thinking, we could do that. DragonCon could do that. And both of us just went off the wall with what we, zombies and.
I remember that, at least on CNN, was it CNN that had the 501st? That was the big thing I remember seeing on TV, that they featured the stormtroopers marching down the street in unison there at the parade.
They feature all kind of stuff from that parade.
But this was like years and years ago when it first started.
And we also had the people that do the Lips Down on Dixie people that do the Rocky Horror every year. And they were in heels and, and the first year I had to talk people into it. It was really kind of a sad parade. We had our guest of honor, Nichelle Nichols, our Grand Marshal. The convertible didn't get there, so we had her in a van with the doors open. I mean, it was difficult. But at any rate, So I felt like we were parading people, but not a physically fit people. So we had to keep the parade kind of short. And so we 1, 2, 3 blocks. I think the first parade was. We came for 4 blocks. We came from Centennial Olympic Park up to Peachtree, down 1, and then into the Marriott. That was the first year we had moved the vendor hall into the Marriott. And by ending the parade in the Marriott, we felt like, okay, we can get everybody down to see the vendors. So that was part of the plan with the first parade. And then as things went great, thankfully we went across Peachtree, because the second year we realized that in order to go down Peachtree, you needed the city council's approval. Well, I've always tried to keep my head down when it comes to approvals, because I kind of look funny. You know what I mean? I'm not your classic business guy. And I mean, I can do it, and I put on the suit and whatnot, but I mean, my group, and these people ain't wearing suits, or sports coats, or
right.
Yeah. You know,
We're
sometimes
fans.
shirts with sleeves. So at any rate, well, but the rule was if you had wanted to go on Peachtree, you had to have the city council's approval, unless you had already been on Peachtree. So we technically had crossed Peachtree, so we had been on Peachtree. So then we started.
So you grandfathered in there.
Yeah, we snuck in there. And at any rate, so and the city's been difficult sometimes. We got to the point a few years ago. I mean, sometimes we were getting the parade permit the day of the parade. I mean, it was horrible. There was somebody down there who probably just didn't like us, but you know, so we deal with it. And we had. I said, I'm done. We're having the last DragonCon parade. That's what we're calling it. It's the last DragonCon parade. And the kid said, Dad, you can't do that. I said, yeah, I can. It's my parade. I can do it. And I'm just tired of the city giving us a hard time. Well, the city got wind of it. We had our permit a month ahead, but it's still the last DragonCon parade. So we got our permits, everything. And everybody said, Pat, you and Sherry have to ride in it. You have to ride in it. I'd always set it off and gotten to the end and broke it down. And they said, you have to ride in it. So I said, great. Sherry, you driving? The grandkids, we all dressed like nerds. I had the Band-Aid around here and a unicorn hat and the suspenders. And I had a slide rule, which none of my grandkids or kids knew what that was. A slide rule? Anyway, so we were in the parade, and I started seeing things that I'd never seen before. The people in Atlanta were actually the adults moving back and letting kids come and sit on the curb.
It's huge.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, I love me some kids. And at any rate, and seeing that just flipped me out. And frankly, seeing all the people. There were people in the parking lots. There were people in the buildings.
Huge.
Right. I always had kind of cut around all that so I could,
Yeah.
And it was, kind of the case, Sherry and I look at each other and we can't quit this.
Yeah.
But at any rate, we already knew we weren't. We knew before we ever rode in the parade that it wasn't going to, we weren't going to not do it. So the next year we had the last DragonCon parade volume 2. So nothing to it. So there you go.
So you've been doing it now. The parade. How old is the parade now?
20. Well, you have to count the virtual, and it's 21. So we started in 2001.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's a trip. So you guys have been in the parade.
I've been
too,
a couple times. Yeah, when we had released of Battlefield Earth, and we were the big monster Turl was walking there with Johnny Good Boy Tyler and Chrissy, and we hired some actors that did it, and bagpipes. So that was fun. But just walking there, it's just. I mean, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people just all along. How long is the parade now? It's not the 3 or 4 blocks anymore.
No, we started North Avenue, maybe a mile.
Yeah.
I don't know. We started North Avenue and Peachtree, and then we come down past Hard Rock, I think, and then go down and cross over.
Yeah.
But whatever.
No,
it's not going to get any longer because we are not a physically fit people. We are a parading people, but not a physically fit people.
I mean, I do the Hollywood Christmas Parade, and that's almost 3 miles, and that's a long parade. It's a long parade. It holds a lot of people. We'll get 1 million people there on the parade route there in Hollywood, but that's a long walk, a long schlep. whatever you're doing there in the parade.
Right. And you know, and I was watching the parade some this year. We have the Lakeside Viking marching band. I mean, and these people, it's awesome. You know, we have another band called the Marching Abominables, and that's killer. We have the periodic table of elements where the copper is a guy dressed like an old New York cop with the hat, copper, get it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just insane. These guys,
creativity
is just runs wild here. So
now for someone who wants to be able to participate in DragonCon, like they're from where they're a writer, how do they, like, you've got a booth here, and we've always opened it up in our booth here for our winners to come in and sign books or that type of thing. But if someone's a writer and they want to be able to participate in the writing tracks or in panels, or what level do they have to be before they can actually participate?
Sometimes, while usually my board of directors stays out of the way and they've let me do whatever I please, result oriented, at some point in time, they felt like I had enough guests. So I think they said 400. That's it, Pat. So I had to get creative. And I said, so we started a new category of guests called a professional. So if you were a professional writer and you had a couple of books and you had a little bit, I think they won, that'd be great.
If they're winners of Rise of the Future type of,
we'd give them a badge as a professional, bring them into the show, and they could do panels. So that is awesome. So
give me a problem, I'll give you a solution.
Let me know the rules and I'll beat you to death with them. So it's just, but anyway, but it's really become, when I was still the chairman and doing the meetings, you know, every year I'd announce, and we're going to have 400 guests, and everybody would just laugh. And, you know, I mean, it's like the guy ahead, like the population. Okay. The guy ahead of me lied about how many people we had. I mean, bad lied. It took me 3 years to get to the number that he claimed we had in 2000. So every year I was the number he had out in 2000. I think it was 20,000. I said, yep, we had 20,000 people. The next year, yep, we had 20,000 people. Third year, yep, we had 20,000 people. But that third year, oh yeah, we had every bit of 20,000 people, every bit, and then some. So at any rate, it almost became a running joke as far as the population. But I mean, come on, you come to the show, does the numbers really matter? I mean, as long as we stay solvent and we can have some fun, what's up with the numbers? You know, I mean, to the fire marshal, I understand that's a big deal, but you know, we bring in lots of fire marshals. Scares me to death when I see 3 of them together drinking. You know, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. And I think it's important people understand the importance of conventions, also the significance of DragonCon, and that really is a venue for winners of Rise of the Future that they can actually find out about this pro rate, professional level that they can
give them a free badge. They come in and do panels, get better known, get to meet other authors. Yeah, you know, which is, you know, I mean, come on. And same thing goes for artists too, professional level, and you know,
which is perfect,
right? And of course, the other thing too, if they ever get rejected and you know them, they know a guy.
So, definitely know a guy that knows a guy.
Yeah, there you go. So you know, we can help with that. So they have not figured out at this point to limit me on professionals. They haven't, so I'm woohoo.
Okay, good. Well, that's awesome. So thank you very much, Pat. This has been great.
Well, thank you, John. It's been fun.
Great. And thank you for listening. Subscribe to the Writers of the Future podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. The Rise of the Future podcast is available on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, Player FM, iHeart, and Spotify. We've also been globally syndicated on United Public Radio Network. Writers and Illustrators of the Future are contests created by L. Ron Hubbard to provide a means for the aspiring writer and artist to be seen and acknowledged. It is free to enter and open to new and amateur short story writers and artists of science fiction or fantasy. Again, thank you very much, Pat.
Thank you, John. It's always a kick.
DJ Delight, let's go. undone, shining brighter than the sun, 'cause we are legends, and we'll live on in memories on the pages of history.